All right, welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. I'm Ginette, and with me is Elyse and Lisa, and we are some of the mediums and channelers at Avalon Spirit. And every Friday, we gather to talk about the energies, anything to do within the realm of spirit, what's going on, kind of taking a pulse of the energies too. And what is so interesting is today, I think we kind of nailed the pulse for one big piece that's happening right now, which is we'll use the term self-sabotage, but we're going to find out why we actually don't want to embrace that term. But I think it's a beautiful entry into this conversation because this week has been so intense. The moon has been incredibly intense, incredibly intense. Um, and the world around us is really intense right now. There's a lot whirling in it, and a lot of it has a lot of density. So it's like really pulling us down. We have to work really hard to come up. And there's this point that I think is a very human thing where we just feel like sometimes, like, I just can't. And then what do we do in that moment? Right. And this is where we could put in that big title of self sabotage. Oftentimes we'll go to self sabotage, but Elise is going to take this to the next level, break it apart so we can really understand why we do that and what it actually means and how to reroute it. So,
Yes, very
welcome.
important. Take out your pen and pencil
Yes,
because this
We
is
were
applicable to everybody.
we were
absolutely.
chatting before and I like started ranting. So buckle in. It might get spicy. I get really worked up about this. I think because I'll start by saying like in working with people in coaching, but also in like my own I'm a lifelong like self-developer and I'm always people we're trying to meet goals and we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that and there was this, especially I used to find it big time when I was really involved in the health and wellness and like fitness world of like, you're self-sabotaging. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're sabotaging your own goals. And I think that is like, there's so much shame that gets put on somebody when we're told you're self-sabotaging because it's so point the finger at you're making this choice. And there is a choice component in it for sure. There's a choice component in everything. I think we talked about that, last week or the week before, whatever. But when there's so many different things happening when we quote unquote do something to self sabotage that I think to actually, when we get to like the nuts and bolts of why we're doing that, the shame associated with that term is like utter bullshit. And it makes me really angry because I think it actually creates more self sabotage and it will facilitate a deeper cycle of it versus actually breaking the cycle and moving towards what you want. So, what's an example we can work off of? Like, if we can make something up.
Of
Like maybe,
self-sabotage?
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
Go
like
for it, Lee.
maybe if somebody is wanting to let's use because I think a really good common thing would be I always come up with relationships or money, but let's go money because I don't want it to turn into a love thing. But like self-sabotage could be like if people are trying to manifest and grow their own like um financial whatever, but then self-sabotaging behaviors could be, frivolous spending or, like that kind of stuff. Like that
mhm,
could be something that people would point a finger and be like, you're sabotaging your own wealth.
yeah,
Would
totally.
that be a good one?
Hmm.
Yeah, that could absolutely work. I mean, all of them could, but yes, that's perfect. So, for me, what comes up when we're talking about self sabotage is there's a cycle of a thing that we keep doing to harm ourselves in some way. And we've talked about this at length before on in other episodes around when we're doing something that usually is harmful towards ourselves, there's a need that we're trying to meet. There's something internal that's like, return to this thing. And I think there's a couple different reasons, and there's probably even more that I won't even bring up, but one of them being there's some sort of core or childhood wound that we are seeking to re experience in order to heal it. So we know that trauma that lives in our body, lives in our nervous system, especially when it's unprocessed. If it's living in our body, it's unprocessed. It seeks to complete the nervous system response, it seeks to complete the trauma. Our bodies are good at that when we actually have safety and space to do it. So unconsciously we keep returning to the same experience, the same experience, the same experience, hoping eventually the person or the thing or the experience that we're entering into will change. So if we use the money, it's like, well, okay, I got money, now I'm going to spend frivolously in hopes that that makes me happy. Oh,
Inside that fulfills that feeling of
yes.
safety or security.
Yeah, when really it probably isn't, because we know that that is not what money is going to do. It can have
Yeah.
impacts on it, but it's not at the core, right? Look at all the really rich people that are miserable. So we keep perpetuating that cycle. And if we don't have the tools or someone outside of us to support us, or the skills within ourselves, or even that awareness that it's happening, it's going to keep happening and happening and happening. If we then say to somebody, well, you're just self-sabotaging yourself, that implies that there is a conscious choice of you don't care if you harm yourself, you're just doing the thing anyways. And we can even have an awareness that we're harming ourselves. But if we don't understand why it's happening, and it's usually that core wound that's like driving us to heal that experience, it's gonna perpetually happen. And so to point the finger and say, like, shame, 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 you're self-sabotaging, that's creating more wounding. Like, that's gonna make the cycle of self-sabotage deeper, more consistent. We're good and likely those things that we're trying to heal are going to get bigger. And so, like, why do we shit on ourselves? Why do we shit on each other and like point the finger at self-sabotage? It just So I'll pause there. There's another component, but
Oh.
Yeah. That deserves a pause. Actually, that really deserves a pause because isn't that the thing? Like the moment it can actually, it's those aha moments where it can take the weight off.
mm-hmm.
Where you're like, oh, I'm not just being an idiot. You
Yeah.
know, like I'm not just ridiculous, whatever your words are.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, there's actually something here to this action. I'm like, and that moment and that click of consciousness is so powerful. It's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a gift of knowledge. That piece right there. I think that piece right there can help so many people as they move through the transformation this year is like, okay, what's actually at the core of this?
Mm-hmm. And I think this comes up in the spiritual community so much because it's like, well, just what do you just call in what you want? And it's like, well, okay, yes, all of that, the energetics of it are also true. And if we have this cycle, which like I would venture to say 99.9% of us do in some area of our life, that's going to be the default setting, right? It's often why we can mentally override. I mean, this is a topic for January, right? Where everyone's new year, new you, and intentions and da da da. And then that falls off within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever long. And then it's like, I suck. I didn't stick with it. I didn't do the thing. And okay, maybe you didn't do the thing, but there's probably a real big reason why, whether you're aware of it or not. And I would say, even if we're aware of that cycle, that doesn't mean it's actually easy to break either. It takes time and tools and safety to move through it. And I guess that comes to the other piece that I think plays a big role in the like self-sabotaging thing, the self-sabotaging cycle or whatever, is our nervous system is always trying to seek safety and coherence. And if we are in a situation where we regularly feel a certain way, that becomes our new normal. And so we can consciously say, okay, I'm trying to manifest abundance, but I've been used to living not in abundance. And I am also going to caveat when we're talking about abundance or anything like that. There's always like socioeconomic, like there's real world factors to this. But if we're just talking about like the energy or the nervous system piece behind it, what we experience regularly becomes safe to our nervous system because it understands it and it knows what to expect.
Yeah.
And so when we then desire to move towards something else, because consciously I can be like, yeah, this sucks. I don't want to experience this anymore. I want to change the cycle. I'm going to stop self-sabotaging. I'm going to not be in this type of relationship or not overspend or not do the thing or whatever. That new experience that we're desiring is completely foreign to our nervous system and to our mind. And that, even though consciously I can be like, that would be better, life would be better because of X, Y, and Z, I don't experience that safety inside. It's like when you go on a trip and you're excited to go to this new place and you get there and then you're like, oh my gosh, like culture shock. I don't speak the language or I don't know where I'm going or and there's a anxiety energy. There's a nervous system reaction in that. It's a lack of understanding of your surroundings, of your environment. It's a lack of understanding. So maybe we do the things to get to that new place and then internally we're like, oh shit, how do I exist here? Like this feels so foreign to me and that might feel unsafe. How do I stay here? And then that unconscious mechanism of oopsie, let's go back to what we know, which was the thing we were trying to move away from. And so until we can teach ourselves, and I think this is a big thing in the manifesting world, until we can teach ourselves how to feel safer on the way to the new thing, but also once we get to the new thing, it's never gonna stick. Like ever, ever, ever. And I'm sitting here preaching this. I'm practicing this right now with my person.
100%.
It's not to say any of us really have it figured out because I think if there's anything you're working towards, there's going to be a lack of safety in it to some degree. And once
Yeah.
you get there, you're going to have to find a way to support yourself in that. Otherwise, it probably won't stay.
Yeah.
Good point.
You know, when you talk about the world of manifesting too, Elise, that really does, it just lands because I saw something and this woman was explaining it exactly like that. She said, we all seem to seek the result. So we all seem to seek the thing or the action or the thing, right? Whether it's money, whether it's a house, whether it's a lifestyle, whether it's the perfect mate or whatever it is, because the thing is going to elicit the actual thing you're seeking, which is the feeling that it generates, right? And so we do it all wrong because we try to just jump over all the things in the middle to get to that thing, thinking that that's going to do the change, but it's not. It's like the thing that you're seeking is actually just the result that happens inevitably, but you miss the steps by doing it that way, which is the thoughts that create the beliefs, which create your actions and then therefore your reality, right? And so if you don't actually go in and start being very conscious about the thoughts first, because your thoughts are the things that create your beliefs, and your beliefs create the reactions or actions and
Mhm.
the result, you know? So until you go in and really take a look at the thoughts first, you can jump all you want and actually be given the thing, and then self-sabotage happens because the middle bit isn't happening. The thoughts and beliefs aren't taking place to be able to withstand the end result. So you're just given the end result and you're like, oh, I don't have the tools to hold this.
Mhm.
And then you go back and start again. But you're right. The word self-sabotage is like, look at, you get all this stuff and then you throw it out the window. What's wrong with you? Shame, 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 shame. When it's like, no, no, no. What's happening here? What are the most times unconscious thoughts, right? So bringing the unconscious to the conscious and being able to like realign with the thoughts that create the beliefs, which then result in the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I just love that because there's so many examples that come up where you really want to seek something, right? And you don't really know why. It's because when somebody else has it, it seems like that must be great. And then I don't have to feel what I'm feeling here. So I want that end result, right?
Mhm.
It's interesting. I'll give a personal example. I remember I had so much shame my whole life about quitting things. And I was always called a quitter, and people were always like, you're such a self-sabotage. You quit everything you do. You have this job, you quit it. You make plans, you don't show up. Like you were the most flaky, unreliable, whatever, because you quit everything, right? And that was just such something that I was like, yeah, that's me. I suck. all the time until I had this beautiful, like my very first life coach kind of that came in, and I'm like, I just ruin everything because I don't have what it takes to follow through with things. I'm a quitter. And she's like, "What?" And I explained it, and she's like, "It sounds to me like, because going deep, one of my biggest things in life is freedom. Like that I came here to experience as a human in this life is freedom." And she's like, "It sounds to me like you unconsciously seek things to break out of it so you can experience that sense of freedom instead of reprogramming yourself in the first place to make the choices and belief systems and on a daily basis that create freedom in everything that you do, so that you don't have to create the unconsciously create these situations to break free of, and then shame, self-sabotage, shame, I did it again, I'm such a shitty person, you know what I mean? And this is, as you were talking, Elyse, like my whole life with understand. And I know this, and like I teach it, but when it's like something that you need to hear and it's like landing, I think this is really intense because maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe that's allowing people to that's why it kind of feels a little stagnant or like pretty like dense, because you can't skip the steps.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't see beyond the fog. So like let's start here and then bring our unconscious thoughts to the conscious awareness so that we can start to rewrite our book of life instead of going off the one that was given to us. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Absolutely. It ties into your message yesterday on your channel, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Like going in.
Totally. Totally.
It's
I'm crying.
exactly that.
I just like this so much.
Ah, it's so true. And as much as we are all collectively ascending and growing and releasing and all of this, I think some of the things that run so deep within us, though, that can even be unconscious until we have these moments of realization is like shame and judgment. Right? Because it is so ingrained in us from such an early age. Like your example, Lisa, where people were like, you're just a quitter. You're just a quitter. Like it's ingrained in you from a younger age to self-identify with that judgment
Totally.
instead of helping you figure out why are you feeling that way as you're growing up so that it doesn't become the thing it has become, right? And we all have that in different ways. And I think it's so interesting, but also so timely that these next levels of conscious awareness are coming to the surface, because what that does now is that is so incredibly empowering. Like even to understand that that's what's happening, you might not have the tools to get you out of it, but even the understanding that aha moment totally changes your trajectory,
Totally.
anyone's trajectory, right? Because it's like, wait a minute, I get the pattern that's happening here. I think that is so powerful. Like
Yeah.
what an amazing tool to use in this year where we have so much choice of empowerment or agitation is the ability to recognize. I think that's fantastic.
Totally. I heard an astrologer say that. They're like, 2025 is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be the year that you're like, holy shit, I see all the things in front of me and I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to put it together, and it's going to be the like most empowered machine I've ever built because I see all the pieces. Or it's going to be the year where it's like, look at all these pieces scattered everywhere. My life is a
Mm,
mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like it is like all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
That's really interesting. But when you go back to the whole purpose of what we were talking about, it's the self-sabotage. But when you really believe that you're the person who's sabotaging your own existence, you are the person looking at all those pieces sitting on the ground. You know what I mean? And it's
mhm,
like you have to be the person who's saying, no, no, you know exactly what to do with all these things. Not look at you, you got shit everywhere. You know what I mean? But for
mhm,
some reason, it feels like, I don't know, maybe not for everybody. Maybe I'm really like self-identifying with this, but it just feels like we were kind of raised in a world where it was all about that, all about like, you don't know what the hell you're doing or self-sabotaging or like
mhm.
there's something else is always better. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to say. I just think
I
that
think
like
it
we
is
all
most
have
people.
that power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is most people in some area of life. Maybe
Mhm.
some people experience it more like in more areas of life, like holy, my whole house is a mess versus like my one room is a mess.
Yeah.
But I would venture to say most people have a room where this plays out because I think that that's part of the human
Yeah.
experience. But to even take it,
Relationships. Yeah.
yeah, to even take it a step deeper, I also think that our soul contracts and our past life stuff can come up in this
Big time.
Mhm.
because and those are some of the deepest rooted things because I can't necessarily go back in my mind and be like, oh, this person said this to me and then this is why. Or we can, and I can say, oh, I remember this happening when I was young. But then even when I work with that, I'm like, that doesn't feel like the root of it. And I think that that root can come from soul contract stuff or past life things that we're
Mhm.
trying to karmically move through and release. And so it can feel like this never ending well of mess in your room. And you're like, oh my God, when is it going to get clean? And I don't necessarily know that there is a point where it gets clean, to be honest. And that's not to like disempower, but I think it's to say that it becomes easier to keep it tidy. But a room,
Mhm.
once we clean it, never gets not messy again. There's
Yeah.
always
It's
a
going to
time
be
where we
lived
have
in.
to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we always have to like retidy. I think that tidying just becomes easier and it doesn't feel as overwhelming or all encompassing because it's like, oh, I just have a few things to put away. Because life will always happen, as you said, Jeanette.
Hmm. So interesting.
That is so interesting. Oh,
Stop
there's
saying
so much.
self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
Right?
listening, erase it. I don't like
That's a
it.
good point.
Yeah. What part of myself is asking to be seen and heard right now?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a beautiful statement. You know, it just, and I'm not simplifying this in an aloof way of being like, it's just simple. That's not how I'm meaning this, but I'm gonna say it's just about giving that space in those moments for reflection of self, like just honest reflection of self. And I mean, I know for me, sometimes I will miss those spaces of honest reflection because I'm too busy and in a rush of doing things. So I'll just like throw a quick judgment or 70 at whatever is happening and move forward. And it's about creating like that space. And I think we often feel we don't have time or space for those moments. But even if we allowed like a solid minute, we could gain so much insight in that solid minute. Because the reason why I'm comparing it is it's like when we stop and take three solid breaths, like when we're in anxiety or we're in rush mode and we're like, okay, I should relax. Okay, here I am. That's not it. That's totally not it. But if you stop and you're like, all right, breath in, breath out, three of those, which probably takes maybe a minute. We actually like we've talked about before, change our whole nervous system in that moment to create that space. And so I think if we get used to the idea of creating those pockets of space in those moments, we might not react so harshly with the judgments. And we might be able to
Mhm.
see or feel or intuit kind of what's
Mm,
bubbling under there. But it needs that space.
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And awareness, because space creates that awareness, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because if you're ripping through it, what do is you do the things that are more familiar, you know,
Absolutely.
that you're
Hmm.
familiar with rather than necessarily what's in your greatest good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And within that space, like you said, Lisa, offering in rather than being like, okay, space now, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why is this cycle happening? It's like the baseline has to be compassion
Hmm.
because resistance or shame or judgment or that push energy in a space of I'm trying to complete a trauma, I'm trying to find safety will only create less safety,
Hmm.
will only
Yeah.
create more
Like
of the
judgment.
the pain that's there. So it's like the doorway in has to be from a compassionate, loving, not trying to push it out, not trying to like change it, but just like, why are you here? I like something in me is crying for some support or to be seen or to be held or to be understood or to find safety. What is that? And that is a practice because in this cycle, we've also been wired, like you said, Lisa, to experience shame and judgment. So even if you're like, oh, I can't get to that compassion right now, don't shame and judge yourself for that. Know that that
Yeah.
is a like this is, and I think that's where
Yeah.
it's like the room will always be messy because I think, or can
Yeah.
always get messy because the world around us will always have, you can feel so grounded in yourself and your clean house and all the rooms, and then someone you love can come in and say something shitty.
They come in with muddy ass boots. You're like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
damn
trump,
it.
trump, trump. You gotta whip out the
Yeah.
carpet cleaner.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then again, it becomes okay, well, it's a little bit easier because I'm working from a baseline. But all of it, we have to keep circling back to, and the irony of all of this is the more that we enter into these experiences with compassion for ourselves and love, we create a scaffolding for our system to be like, oh, I can trust her. I can trust that she's going to hold my pain or my tension or my whatever with love and care versus the shame that she was taught forever, or he,
Mm-hmm.
or you, or they, whoever.
Mhm.
And it's this like self-fulfilling prophecy that you're cleaning up the room, but also the scaffolding of the house becomes stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. All right.
Ooh, she's a big one this
That was
week.
a good one.
Shiza.
Just such a something to really like chew on and ponder, but I just
Yeah.
think it's so empowering. Like it
Yeah,
just
it is.
you can't unknow that once you know
Yeah.
it. I just
Mhm.
love that. So
Yeah. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for that wisdom, Elise. That is
Yeah.
Oh,
just so you. You just bring in these
Yes.
amazing ringers of like
Yes. Where it
epiphany.
hits you
I'm like
hard.
hot.
I
Yeah.
love it.
That's so
My
good.
body's like,
I'm
ah.
so
I
grateful.
love
Oh
it.
my God.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Please do share in the comments, any stories that you want to share of your own journey in this way, because the sharing of stories really help empower others to explore theirs. So if you're comfortable, share, like, subscribe, and we'll see you all next week. So have an empowered rest of your week.